Hello and welcome to Cheating Tales Lab. We're thrilled you could join us. We've got an exciting story to tell, and we hope it brings all the drama you're here for. Let's jump into it. Patrick Elliott sneezed as he shifted another box in his late father's storage unit. Dust billowed, catching the weak light filtering through the windows. He paused, wiping his brow with a handkerchief. His eyes fell on an ornate wooden box tucked away in a shadowy corner. "What's this?" he muttered, reaching for it. His fingers traced the intricate carvings, feeling the weight of history in his hands. The latch clicked open with surprising ease. Inside, a single document lay neatly folded. Patrick's brow furrowed as he unfolded it, squinting in the dim light. His eyes widened, then narrowed as he read. What the hell? It was a will. His will, with his signature clear as day at the bottom. The document declared he'd been dead for 3 months, leaving everything to his wife Christine and a man named Lorenzo McCullough. Patrick's mind raced. How did his signature get there? Who was Lorenzo McCullough? And Christine? His stomach churned at the implications. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone and carefully photographed the forged will. He replaced it in the box, positioning it exactly as he'd found it. As he locked up the storage unit, his heart pounded so loudly he was sure anyone passing by would hear it. The drive home was a blur. Patrick's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. He pulled into the driveway of their suburban home, its perfectly manicured lawn and cheerful flower beds now seeming like a mockery. He found Christine in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. The harsh fluorescent lights glinted off the knife in her hand. She looked up, a smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're home early," she said, her voice light and casual. Patrick's jaw clenched. He pulled out his phone, sliding it across the counter with the photo of the forged will displayed. "Care to explain this, Christine?" Her eyes widened for a moment before narrowing. She set down the knife, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "It's easier if you don't fight, Patrick. You'll regret everything if you do." "Who's Lorenzo McCullough?" Patrick demanded, his voice low and controlled despite the rage building inside him. Christine's smirk grew. "That's none of your concern." "None of my concern?" Patrick's voice rose. "My name is on a forged will leaving everything I own to you and this man I've never heard of. How is that not my concern?" Christine's demeanor shifted, her hostility becoming more apparent. "Drop it, Patrick. You have no idea what you're getting into." "No, I don't," Patrick agreed, his tone icy. "So why don't you enlighten me?" Christine's eyes flashed dangerously. "You want to play this game? Fine. How about I enlighten your department head about your affair with that graduate student last year?" Patrick's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, don't play dumb," Christine sneered. "I have emails, hotel receipts. It would be such a shame if your perfect reputation was tarnished. I wonder how quickly they'd fire you." Patrick's mind raced. There was no affair, no graduate student, but he realized with growing horror how easily Christine could fabricate evidence, how she could twist innocent interactions into something sinister. "You're bluffing," he said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Christine's smile was predatory. "Are you willing to bet your career on that?" The full weight of her betrayal hit Patrick like a physical blow. This wasn't just about money or a forged will. This was about control, about dismantling his entire life. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Christine shrugged, picking up the knife again. "Because I can. Because you're boring, Patrick. Predictable. I want more, and Lorenzo can give me that." "You won't get away with this," Patrick said. Christine's laugh was cold and mirthless. "I already have. This is your final warning, Patrick. Back off, or I'll destroy everything you've worked for." She stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Patrick alone with the weight of her threats hanging in the air. For a moment, he stood there, stunned. Then, survival instinct kicked in. He knew he couldn't stay in this house, not with Christine, not when she held so many unknown cards. Moving quietly but quickly, Patrick went to their bedroom. He packed a bag with essentials, clothes, toiletries, his passport. In his study, he gathered critical documents, birth certificate, social security card, bank statements. He He downloaded financial records and emails from their shared computer, copying them onto a flash drive. As he worked, he called his friend and lawyer, Theodore Myers. The call went to voicemail. "Ted, it's Patrick. I need your help. It's urgent. Call me as soon as you get this." He kept the message vague, aware that Christine might access his phone records. Patrick paused in the study, a thought occurring to him. He set up a hidden camera, positioning it to capture most of the room. If Christine or this Lorenzo character came snooping, he'd have evidence. He heard the shower start upstairs. It was now or never. Patrick slipped out of the house, tossing his packed bag into the trunk of his car. As he pulled out of the driveway, he caught a glimpse of Christine in the upstairs window, wrapped in a towel, her face twisted in fury. He drove, no clear destination in mind, just the burning need to put distance between himself and the life he thought he knew. His mind whirled with plans, with questions, with the beginnings of a strategy to fight back. As the familiar streets of his neighborhood faded in the rearview mirror, Patrick felt a determination settle over him. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a war he intended to win. Patrick pulled into a small, nondescript motel on the outskirts of town. He paid cash for a week's stay, using a false name. The room was dingy and smelled of stale cigarettes, but it would do for now. He sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, trying to process the events of the day. His phone buzzed, a text from Christine. "Where are you?" He ignored it, instead pulling out his laptop. He needed to start piecing together what was happening. Who was Lorenzo McCullough? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, how was he going to fight back? Patrick opened his email, scanning through months of correspondence. Nothing stood out at first, but then he noticed a pattern. Small discrepancies in their joint account, money moving that he couldn't account for. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Christine. "You're making a mistake, Patrick. Come home and we can talk about this." He scoffed, typing out a reply before thinking better of it and deleting it. No, he wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a response. Not yet. Instead, he called his department head, Dr. Saul Godfrey. "Patrick, is everything all right?" "It's rather late," Saul answered, his voice groggy. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Saul," Patrick said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I need to take a leave of absence. Family emergency." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Of course, Patrick. Take all the time you need. Is there anything I can do?" Patrick hesitated. Should he tell Saul about Christine's threats? No, not yet. He needed more information first. "No, thank you. I'll keep you updated." After hanging up, Patrick turned back to his laptop. He started a new document, typing out everything he knew so far. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As the first rays of dawn crept through the motel windows, Patrick finally allowed himself to close his eyes. But sleep didn't come easily. His dreams were filled with shadowy figures and betrayal, Christine's laughter echoing in the background. He woke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back, and with them, a renewed determination. Patrick showered and changed, then headed out. He needed coffee and a plan. As he sat in a small diner, nursing a cup of bitter coffee, he made a list of his next steps. 1. Find out who Lorenzo McCullough is. 2. Gather evidence of the financial discrepancies. 3. Consult with Ted about legal options. 4. Secure his position at the university. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Ted returning his call. "Patrick? What's going on?" "Your message sounded urgent." Patrick took a deep breath. "Ted, I need your help. It's Christine. She's trying to steal everything from me. There's a forged will, threats to my career. I don't know what to do." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Christ, Patrick. Okay, where are you? We need to talk face to face." Patrick hesitated. Could he trust Ted? He'd known him for years, but then again, he'd thought he knew Christine too. "I'd rather not say right now. Can we meet somewhere neutral? The coffee shop on 5th and Main?" "Sure, Patrick. I'll be there in an hour." As Patrick waited for Ted, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every time the bell above the door jingled, he tensed, half expecting to see Christine or the mysterious Lorenzo walk in. Finally, Ted arrived, looking worried. "Patrick, what the hell is going on?" Patrick took a deep breath and began to explain everything. The forged will, Christine's threats, the mysterious Lorenzo McCullough. Ted listened intently, his frown deepening with each new revelation. "This is serious, Patrick," Ted said when Patrick finished. "We need to move quickly. First things first, we need to secure your assets. I'll file for an emergency injunction to freeze your joint accounts. Then we need to start building a case." Patrick nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time since discovering the will. "What about Christine's threats to my career?" Ted's expression hardened. "Empty threats. We'll deal with them if she actually tries anything. For now, focus on gathering evidence. Document everything. And Patrick, be careful. If Christine is capable of this, there's no telling what else she might do." As they parted ways, Patrick felt a mix of emotions: fear, anger, determination. But most of all, he felt a fierce resolve. Christine and Lorenzo had picked the wrong man to mess with. He would fight back, and he would win. Patrick Elliott pulled into the parking lot of a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. The neon sign flickered weakly, half its letters burned out. He paid cash for a week's stay, using a false name. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and desperation, but it would do. He sat on the edge of the bed, laptop balanced on his knees. Time to start digging. Who the hell was Lorenzo McCullough? A quick search turned up more than Patrick expected. Lorenzo McCullough, charismatic real estate developer. Handsome bastard, too, with a smile that probably made middle-aged housewives swoon. Patrick's jaw clenched as he scrolled through articles and press releases. But there was something off about McCullough's success. Properties that seemed to materialize out of thin air. Deals that closed suspiciously fast. Patrick dug deeper, his archaeologist's instinct for uncovering buried secrets kicking in. It took hours of sifting through public records and newspaper archives, but a pattern emerged. Lorenzo had a type: wealthy women, usually married. He'd sweep in, charm them, and somehow end up with their money. The women were left broke and humiliated. "Son of a bitch," Patrick muttered. He pulled up his own bank records next. There it was, a series of large transfers from their joint account to a company he didn't recognize. A quick search confirmed his suspicion. It was one of Lorenzo's shell companies. Patrick's hands shook with rage as he opened his email. He had to know how deep this went. How long had Christine been betraying him? The answer made him sick. Months of correspondence between Christine and Lorenzo, hidden in a secret folder. They discussed their plan in nauseating detail: how to manipulate Patrick, how to siphon off his money, how to leave him with nothing. Patrick slammed the laptop shut, while rising in his throat. He'd been a fool, blind to what was happening right under his nose. But no more. He was going to fight back, and he was going to win. He reached for his phone, dialing Theodore Myers. "Ted? It's Patrick. We need to talk. I've found something." Across town, Christine paced in Lorenzo's sleek downtown apartment. "He's gone." Packed a bag and disappeared. Lorenzo lounged on the leather sofa, looking unconcerned. "Relax, darling. Where's he going to go?" Christine glared at him. "You don't know Patrick. He's not as stupid as you think." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone. Remember who got you out of that boring life." Christine bit back a retort. She'd made her choice, for better or worse. "We need to move faster, before he figures out what's really going on." Lorenzo stood, pulling her close. "Don't worry your pretty little head. I've dealt with his type before. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." Patrick met Ted at a quiet coffee shop the next morning. The lawyer listened in growing disbelief as Patrick laid out what he discovered. "Jesus, Patrick, this is bigger than I thought. We need to build an airtight case." Patrick nodded. "I'm not stopping until I take them both down. What's our next move?" Ted leaned in. "We need more allies. People who can vouch for your character, protect your interests. Who can we trust?" Patrick thought for a moment. "Dr. Saul Godfrey, my department head. He's always had my back. And there's a former student of mine, Trevor Joseph. He's a private investigator now." Ted nodded approvingly. "Good. I'll start building the legal case. You reach out to them. And Patrick, be careful. These people are dangerous. Patrick's next stop was the university. He found Dr. Godfrey in his office, surrounded by stacks of papers and ancient artifacts. Patrick, come in, come in. How's that family emergency? Patrick closed the door behind him. Saul, I need your help. It's worse than I thought. He laid out the situation. The forged will, Christine's betrayal, Lorenzo's scheme. Saul listened in stunned silence. My God, Patrick, what can I do? I need you to protect my position here. Christine's threatened to ruin my career with false accusations. I can't lose everything I've worked for. Saul's face hardened. Not on my watch. You're one of our best, Patrick. I'll make sure the board knows it. Take whatever time you need to sort this out. Relief washed over Patrick. Thank you, Saul. I won't forget this. His next call was to Trevor Joseph. The young man answered on the second ring. Professor Elliot? This is unexpected. Trevor, I have a job for you. It's complicated, and it's personal. Are you interested? There was a pause on the other end of the line. For you, Professor? Absolutely. What do you need? Patrick explained the situation. Trevor let out a low whistle. That's one hell of a mess, Professor. But don't worry. I'm on it. I'll start digging into Lorenzo's background, see what skeletons I can find. With his team assembled, Patrick felt a surge of hope. He wasn't alone in this fight. His final call was to his sister, Charlotte. She answered with her usual cheerful tone, but it quickly turned to concern as Patrick spoke. Oh, Pat, I'm so sorry. Of course you can stay with me. As long as you need. Patrick's voice caught. Thanks, Char. I don't know what I'd do without you. That evening, they gathered at Charlotte's house. Patrick, Ted, Saul, Trevor, and Charlotte. The dining room table was covered in papers, laptops open to various documents. Ted took charge. All right, let's build this case. Trevor, what have you found on Lorenzo? Trevor grinned. Oh, you're going to love this. Our boy Lorenzo has quite the history. I've uncovered at least 3 other cases of him seducing wealthy women and swindling them. He's good at covering his tracks, but not good enough. Patrick leaned forward. Can we use this in court? Ted nodded. Absolutely. It establishes a pattern of behavior. What else? Saul spoke up. I've secured Patrick's position at the university. Any attempts to discredit him will be met with fierce resistance. Charlotte squeezed Patrick's hand. And you've got a safe place to stay as long as you need it. Patrick looked around at his allies, feeling a surge of gratitude. Thank you. All of you. I couldn't do this alone. Ted cleared his throat. Now, we need to be smart about this. Patrick, you need to lay low. Let us do the legwork. The less Christine and Lorenzo know about what we're doing, the better. Patrick nodded reluctantly. He hated feeling helpless, but he knew Ted was right. As the meeting broke up, Patrick pulled Trevor aside. There's one more thing. I need you to keep an eye on Lorenzo's office. If you can plant a listening device, even better. Trevor raised an eyebrow. That's walking a fine legal line, Professor. Patrick's face hardened. I don't care. I need to know what they're planning. Trevor studied him for a moment, then nodded. All right. I'll see what I can do. Days passed. Patrick threw himself into the investigation, poring over financial records and emails. He barely slept, fueled by a burning need for justice. It was nearly midnight when Trevor called. Professor, I'm outside Lorenzo's office. The cleaning crew just left. If I'm going to plant that bug, now's the time. Patrick's heart raced. Do it. But be careful. He paced Charlotte's guest room, waiting for Trevor to call back. An hour passed. Then 2. Just as he was about to call Trevor, his phone buzzed. Trevor? What happened? Professor, you're not going to believe this. I almost got caught. Lorenzo and Christine showed up just as I was finishing. Patrick's blood ran cold. Are you all right? Did they see you? No, I hid in a supply closet. But Professor, I overheard them talking. They're planning to have you committed. They're going to claim you're having a mental breakdown. Patrick's mind raced. This was worse than he'd imagined. Did you get the bug planted? Yeah, it's in place. But Professor, there's something else. In my haste to get out, I think I left something behind. A pin. It has the university logo on it. Patrick cursed under his breath. All right, get out of there. We'll deal with this in the morning. He hung up, his mind whirling. They were trying to have him committed. It was a clever move. If they succeeded, everything he said would be dismissed as the ravings of a madman. He had to move fast. But as he reached for his laptop, a wave of exhaustion hit him. When was the last time he'd slept? He couldn't remember. Patrick sank onto the bed, closing his eyes for just a moment. He'd rest for a few minutes, then get back to work. He woke with a start, sunlight streaming through the windows. His phone was buzzing insistently. Hello, he answered groggily. Patrick, it's Ted. We've got a problem. Christine's lawyers have filed a petition for emergency guardianship. They're claiming you're mentally incompetent. Patrick sat up, fully awake now. On what grounds? They're saying you've been exhibiting erratic behavior, making wild accusations. They've got statements from your neighbors about you leaving suddenly in the middle of the night. Patrick's mind raced. That's when I left after confronting Christine. Damn it. Ted's voice was grim. This is serious, Patrick. If they succeed, you'll lose control of everything. Your assets, your decision-making power, everything. What do? We fight back. Hard. I'm filing counter motions now. We need to show you're of sound mind. That means you need to be visible. Patrick, go to work. Act normal. Don't give them any ammunition. Patrick nodded, even though Ted couldn't see him. Understood. Thanks, Ted. He hung up. Christine and Lorenzo had underestimated him. They thought he'd run, hide, act irrationally. Instead, he'd face this head-on. As he dressed for work, Patrick caught sight of himself in the mirror. He looked tired, drawn, but his eyes burned with determination. He wasn't going to let them win. Not now, not ever. Patrick Elliott sat in Dr. Saul Godfrey's office, his fingers drumming an impatient rhythm on the armrest. The plan was in motion, but everything hinged on Lorenzo taking the bait. Are you sure this will work? Saul asked, worry lines creasing his forehead. Patrick's jaw clenched. It has to. We're out of options. The phone on Saul's desk rang, making them both jump. Saul answered, his eyes widening as he listened. It's for you, he said, handing the phone to Patrick. It's Lorenzo McCullough. Patrick took a deep breath, steeling himself. Mr. McCullough, what a pleasant surprise. Lorenzo's voice oozed charm. Dr. Elliott, I hope I'm not interrupting. I've got a business proposition I think you'll find very interesting. Patrick's free hand clenched into a fist, but his voice remained steady. I'm all ears. I understand you've made quite the archaeological discovery. I'd love to discuss some development opportunities. Perhaps over dinner? Patrick forced a laugh. Why wait? I'm free now if you are. The faculty lounge is private, and I'm sure you'd appreciate the discretion. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Certainly. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Patrick hung up, meeting Saul's concerned gaze. It's on. You know what to do. Saul nodded, reaching for his phone to set the rest of the plan in motion. 20 minutes later, Patrick sat in the faculty lounge, a hidden microphone taped to his chest. The door opened, and Lorenzo McCullough strode in, all gleaming teeth and expensive suit. Dr. Elliott, a pleasure to finally meet you. Lorenzo's handshake was firm, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Patrick gestured to a chair. Please, sit. I'm curious to hear about these development opportunities. Lorenzo leaned forward, his voice low and conspiratorial. Let's cut to the chase, shall we? I know about the Etruscan artifacts you've uncovered. Priceless, I'm sure. But think of the potential if that land were repurposed. Patrick raised an eyebrow. Repurposed? A luxury resort. Condos. Golf course. The possibilities are endless. Lorenzo's eyes gleamed with greed. Of course, such a project would require creative solutions to certain regulations. Creative solutions? Patrick prompted, his hand casually adjusting his tie, ensuring the microphone picked up every word. Lorenzo chuckled. Come now, Dr. Elliott. We're both men of the world. For the right price, any obstacle can be overcome. Permits expedited, inspections passed, artifacts Relocated. Patrick leaned back, his face carefully neutral. And what would my role be in this venture? Your expertise would be invaluable. And of course, your silence. In return, you'd be handsomely compensated. Lorenzo pulled out a piece of paper, sliding it across the table. I've taken the liberty of drafting some preliminary figures. Patrick glanced at the paper, his eyebrows rising at the number of zeros. This is substantial. Lorenzo's smile widened. Consider it a down payment. There's much more where that came from. Patrick stood, pacing the room. It's certainly an intriguing offer. But I have to ask, Mr. McCullough, how can I trust you? After all, I've heard some unsavory rumors about your business practices. Lorenzo's smile faltered for a moment before returning full force. Rumors are just that, Dr. Elliot. Jealous competitors spreading lies. I assure you, my business dealings are entirely above board. Patrick turned, facing Lorenzo. Really? So if I were to look into your past projects, I wouldn't find any irregularities? No swindled investors? No mysteriously vanishing funds? The color drained from Lorenzo's face. What are you implying? Patrick's voice hardened. I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you that I know exactly who you are and what you've done. To those other women. To my wife. To me. Lorenzo stood abruptly, his charm evaporating. You have no proof. Patrick smiled coldly. Don't I? This entire conversation has been recorded, Lorenzo. Your offer to bribe me, your admission of planning to violate regulations. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Lorenzo lunged forward, grabbing Patrick by the shirt. You son of a bitch. I'll destroy you. The door burst open. Ted Myers walked in, followed by 2 police officers. Lorenzo McCullough, you're under arrest for attempted bribery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and a host of other charges we'll be adding as we dig deeper. As the officers handcuffed Lorenzo, Patrick straightened his shirt. Oh, and Lorenzo? You might want to call your lawyer. I have a feeling you're going to need one. Lorenzo snarled as he was led away. This isn't over, Elliot. Patrick watched him go, a satisfaction settling over him. One down, one to go. The next morning, Patrick stood in the police station, watching through a two-way mirror as detectives interviewed Christine. She sat ramrod straight, her face a mask of indignation. This is ridiculous, she snapped. I don't know anything about forged wills or embezzlement. The detective slid a folder across the table. Then perhaps you can explain these emails between you and Mr. McCullough, or these bank transfers. Christine's composure cracked. I want my lawyer. Patrick turned to Ted, who stood beside him. What now? Ted's smile was predatory. Now, we go for the jugular. I've filed for an emergency divorce and asset freeze. Dr. Godfrey is prepared to make a statement to the board, backing you completely. And Trevor's evidence on Lorenzo's past crimes is damning. Patrick nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders. Let's finish this. The next few days were a whirlwind. Patrick presented the forged will and financial records to the police, watching as the case against Christine and Lorenzo grew stronger by the hour. Trevor Joseph's investigation had uncovered a trail of victims across 3 states, each with a similar story of seduction and betrayal. Dr. Godfrey stood before the university board, his voice ringing with conviction. Dr. Elliot is not only innocent of any wrongdoing, but he has been the victim of a vicious conspiracy. This university stands behind him completely. Christine and Lorenzo's attempts to fight back crumbled under the weight of evidence. Their lawyers looked increasingly desperate as each new piece of information came to light. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. Patrick straightened his tie as he prepared to take the stand. Ted gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. You've got this, Patrick. Just tell the truth. Patrick nodded, stepping up to the witness stand. As he was sworn in, he caught sight of Christine and Lorenzo, both looking pale and defeated. Dr. Elliot, the prosecutor began. Please tell the court how you discovered the forged will. Patrick took a deep breath and began his story. He spoke of finding the will in his father's storage unit, of confronting Christine, of the threats and manipulation. He detailed the investigation, the evidence they'd uncovered, the elaborate trap they'd set for Lorenzo. As he spoke, Patrick could see the jury's expressions changing from skepticism to outrage. Christine's lawyer attempted to paint Patrick as unstable, but his calm, measured responses undermined their efforts. Dr. Elliot, Christine's lawyer sneered, "Isn't it true that you've been under immense stress lately? That you've been acting erratically?" Patrick's gaze was steady. "The only stress I've been under is that caused by discovering my wife's betrayal and the plot to steal everything I've worked for. My actions have been those of a man fighting to uncover the truth and protect himself from those who would destroy him." The lawyer faltered, unable to shake Patrick's composure. As the trial progressed, the prosecution's case seemed insurmountable. Bank records, emails, recorded conversations, the evidence piled up, painting a damning picture of Christine and Lorenzo's scheme. Then came the moment that sealed their fate. Lorenzo, seeing the writing on the wall, turned on Christine. "It was all her idea," he shouted, pointing at Christine. "She came to me, said she was tired of her boring husband, wanted more excitement, more money. She's the one who forged the will." Christine's face contorted with rage. "You lying bastard. You're the one who seduced me, who came up with this whole plan." The courtroom erupted into chaos as Christine and Lorenzo hurled accusations at each other. The judge's gavel banged repeatedly, calling for order. In the end, the jury's deliberation was brief. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. The judge's voice was stern as he delivered the sentence. "Christine Elliott and Lorenzo McCullough, your actions show a callous disregard for the law and for basic human decency. You preyed on trust and manipulated emotions for your own gain. I hereby sentence you both to 15 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for 10 years. Patrick watched as Christine and Lorenzo were led away in handcuffs, their faces masks of shock and anger. He felt no satisfaction, no joy, only a profound relief that it was finally over. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for a statement. Patrick stepped up to the microphones, Ted and Dr. Godfrey flanking him. "Justice has been served today," Patrick said, his voice steady. "But this isn't a victory to celebrate. It's a tragedy, a reminder that trust can be betrayed, that people aren't always what they seem. My hope is that others can learn from this, can be more vigilant, more aware." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. "To anyone out there who's been victimized, who's been manipulated or swindled, don't give up. Fight back. The truth will come out." As the reporters shouted questions, Patrick turned away. He caught sight of his sister Charlotte, standing at the edge of the crowd. She gave him a small, proud smile. Patrick walked down the courthouse steps, feeling lighter with each step. The road ahead would be challenging, rebuilding his life, learning to trust again. But he had emerged stronger, wiser, ready to face whatever came next. As he reached the bottom of the steps, Patrick took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. For the first time in months, he felt hope, not just for himself, but for all those who had been victimized by Christine and Lorenzo. Their reign of deception was over. Patrick turned to Ted and Dr. Godfrey. "Thank you, both of you. I couldn't have done this without you." Ted clapped him on the shoulder. "You did all the hard work, Patrick. We just provided the backup." Dr. Godfrey nodded in agreement. "The university is lucky to have you, Patrick. Take some time off, decompress. Your position will be waiting for you when you're ready." Patrick smiled, genuinely this time. "I appreciate that, Saul, but I think what I need now is to get back to work. To normalcy." As they walked away from the courthouse, Patrick's phone buzzed. It was a text from Trevor. "Drinks to celebrate? First round's on me." Patrick chuckled, typing back a quick reply. "Sounds perfect. Meet you in an hour." He pocketed his phone, looking up at the sky. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the city. It felt like a sign, a promise of brighter days ahead. Patrick Elliott had faced betrayal, fought back against seemingly insurmountable odds, and emerged victorious. He had reclaimed his life, exposed the truth, and ensured justice was served. The road ahead would be challenging, but Patrick knew he was ready. He had emerged from this ordeal stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. As he walked toward his car, Patrick allowed himself a small smile. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in months, He was looking forward to it.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.